Welcome back. Bit of bombshell news yesterday from one of the world's richest technology giants, Google's co-founder, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, immediately to step down as CEO and president, respectively, of the parent company, Alphabet.
But as somebody who's covered public companies for quite a while now, a couple decades, this makes me uncomfortable. I wonder what you think, because you covered media companies for a long time, too. This is still a controlled company.
Replacement firm Challenger Gray & Christmas says that 172 chief executives moved on during the month of October.
Since Challenger Gray & Christmas has been keeping track of CEO departures for the year, this is the highest count. So Fox Business put together a list, 13 prevalent CEOs that have given up their position for various reasons. And it kind of shows you that there's a lot more, the tide is turning here. Things are changing. And it kind of shows you that there's a lot more, the tide is turning here. Various reasons. And it kind of shows you that there's a lot more, the tide is turning here. Things are changing. It's not only corporate issues, but personal issues as well.
Is there something new afoot, or is this a one-off to see this number of chief executives leaving?
I think 40% of that number have left for some kind of controversy in their position. Have left for some kind of controversy in their position. So I think that is new. I think there's a lot more transparency in the CEO suite than
I think there's more bad behavior, just more.
I think there is more scrutiny.
Yeah, that's what. Scrutiny. I'm not sure if there's more bad behavior or less.
Yeah,
I would hope there would be less, since there is more scrutiny and transparency. But.
For that one, it'll be interesting to see if this is part of the plan in terms of next year and how much regulation and problems these companies are going to be facing.
Yeah, a lot of departures and all for various reasons.
Yeah.
You pointed out. Interesting stuff. Jackie, thank you so much.
Welcome back. Bit of bombshell news yesterday from one of the world's richest technology giants, Google's co-founder, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, immediately to step down as CEO and president, respectively, of the parent company, Alphabet.
But as somebody who's covered public companies for quite a while now, a couple decades, this makes me uncomfortable. I wonder what you quite a while now, a couple decades. This makes me uncomfortable. I wonder what you think, because you covered media companies for a long time, too. This is still a controlled company. Page and Brin still have absolute control over what happens at this company, yet they've decided they don't have the time to actually run it. And I don't know that we've seen this before in kind of modern tech history. Bill Gates was still chairman of Microsoft until just over 5 years ago, even though he had stepped back from operational roles.
Right.
If you look at Oracle, Larry Ellison doesn't have that kind of control. He's got a big share in the company. Jeff Bezos, I think, also doesn't have that kind of control.
Right, he has negative control to a certain extent, although not even anymore with the divorce settlement too.
Right.
Yeah.
So these founder CEOs, these titans that we thought of, Steve Jobs, similar. He sold out a lot of his initial Apple stake when he left the company in the 80s, bought Pixar, did all that. So he had a lot of influence, but he didn't have this kind of absolute control. We got these two guys with absolute control, but no direct accountability. They put Sundar Pichai up there now. He's been in charge of Google. Now he's in charge of Alphabet too, which I'm not sure gives him that much. I mean, these are like money-losing moonshot bets that he now has to manage as well. And when somebody gets subpoenaed, somebody's got to answer for what happens at this company, whether it's cultural or it's regulatory.
You're setting them up, John. That's what it's.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Look at when Bill Gates stepped down as CEO of Microsoft.
In 2019, a record number of 1,640 CEOs resigned from major corporations. For January 2020 alone, the number was 219, indicating that CEO departures could reach an even higher number this year.
Another big story we are following tonight. Boeing has fired its CEO, Dennis Muilenburg. The world's largest aerospace company has had its reputation and bottom line damaged.
Now that big shakeup at McDonald's, the CEO forced out because of what the company calls a consensual relationship with an employee.
Now, a big change in corporate America. Nike CEO Mark Parker is stepping down effective January 2020.
It's the end of an era. What an era it has been. Bob Iger is one of the most powerful people in entertainment. He's led Disney to unprecedented success, leading major acquisitions like Pixar and Marvel, launching Disney Plus and expanding the company's theme park. An historic day for the Walt Disney Company. Bob Iger, just last year named Time's Business Person of the Year, stepping down as CEO.
The company's in great shape. And that's a great time to turn the reins over.
What's your take on this move? It came out of nowhere.
I think it came out of nowhere, and I think a lot of people.
One of the world's richest men, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, has stepped down from his company's board. The 65-year-old wants to dedicate more time to philanthropy, if I can get that word out properly, including global health, education, and tackling climate change.
Bill Gates has announced he's resigning from the board of the tech giant he co-founded 4 decades ago.
I mean, look, this is a historic move. I mean, Gates, obviously the legacy, speaks for itself.
Lockheed Martin has named a new CEO as Marilyn Houston is set to step down from that role in June. James Takelet, the CEO of American Tower and a current Lockheed Martin board member, will take over the world's largest defense contracting company.
Wells Fargo's board of directors resigned suddenly yesterday, just days after Congresswoman Maxine Waters called for her to resign. Betsy Duke has been chair of Wells Fargo's board since January of 2018. Congresswoman Waters leads the House Financial Services Committee, and that committee released a scathing report on Wells Fargo executives last week.
It's probably not the way Les Wexner pictured it, the breakup of what's left of the retail empire he started more than 50 years ago. The company says Wexner will step down as CEO and chairman of the board at L Brands.
Welcome back with some breaking news on IBM, and that news is that in April, Chairman and CEO Ginny Rometty will step down as the CEO role, at least, and remain chairman temporarily. Of course, been CEO since 2012.
Prominent CEOs to leave or announce their departures in 2020 include the CEOs of Match Group, Credit Suisse, L Brands, Outdoor Voices, MasterCard, Fastly, Harley-Davidson, IBM, T-Mobile, LinkedIn, and Disney, among many others. Why are so many CEOs resigning, and why has their number been increasing recently? The reasons seem to vary. Some analysts talk about a management restructuring, some say it's because of a failure to meet the company's goals, others definitely have stepped down because of sexual harassment scandals or because of a failure to address sexual misconduct within their companies. But it cannot be necessarily a coincidence that CEOs are departing at an increasing rate.
I would like to say that CEOs are resigning because they don't want to do that. I frankly don't think many CEOs resign because they're unwilling to do this. I'm going to describe documents which you can get online. These are the plutonomy memos by Citi to their wealthiest clients. And they call this a managerial aristocracy. That's their phrase. They say it creates a plutonomy, in other words, an economy in which virtually all the wealth is held by a tiny group of folks, and where the workers get a smaller and smaller pie. And so when you give enormous trillion-dollar cuts in taxes of the wealthy people, what are they going to do with all that additional income? Well, after-tax income. They're going to buy more stock. And you're going to get this huge run-up in stocks. That can only work for so long, and we're overdue for recessions, and we don't know exactly what's going to cause it, but, most people think recessions are coming relatively soon. Obviously, the corona is pushing a number of countries over that margin into near-term recessions. So I think that
The problem with hanging on to the past is when you're always looking back.
that first, all these people got incredibly filthy rich. They don't need money. and they certainly don't need their current job.
That's an interesting point.
The Trump administration announced it was looking at sending checks to Americans sooner rather than later to curb the economic costs of the outbreak. But the move strikes a similar tune thousands of Americans heard along the Democrat campaign trail, traced back to former presidential candidate and tech entrepreneur Andrew Yang, who built his campaign around the idea of universal basic income. Yang's UBI proposal, dubbed the Freedom Dividend, said that Americans should receive $1,000 each month from the government, with no strings attached. The former candidate's claim for the program was the only way to protect millions of Americans and the U.S. economy from looming fiscal tragedy. Yet now his aggressive calls for the nationwide UBI program seems to resonate with a number of officials.
And what we've heard from hardworking Americans, many companies have now shut down, whether it's bars or restaurants. Americans need cash now, and the president wants to get cash now.
During his failed 2020 bid for the White House, Yang's unique policy platform was not welcome in its initial introduction, with many in the political world condemning it as another radical idea among the other progressive attempts.
Tonight, the state of California wants to give away some money. It may sound too good to be true, but as of today, the idea is actually a state bill now moving through the legislature.
University of San Diego professor Alan Jin says the plan would cost tens of billions of dollars. Where would the money come from? Taxpayers. We pay a 10% value added or sales tax on goods and services, which aren't currently taxed. Basic necessities like groceries and medicine would be exempt, but everything else, expect to pay.
It's something that's applicable to every branch and every segment of the human society. But in short, what he's telling us to do, if we put it in today's understanding, he's talking about taking over the entire monetary system of the entire planet, a global economic system. So in a sense, we would say that wouldn't it be wonderful if the dollar was the currency that was used around the world, so that when I travel the world, I wouldn't have to get currency exchanges, which actually I rarely do anymore. But the thing is, we might ask, why is it that he would focus on the monetary system? And I think the rapper R. Kelly put it well, money makes the world go round. In fact, a Forbes article made this comment about money. It says, there's no single other material object that controls human behavior more than money. More than love, kindness, friendship, or family. You see, money is whatever you want it to be. I mean, if you look at the history of money, you find that the vehicle that's called money changes a great deal through human history, from basically certain beads or shells on the beach that people found to various forms of paper currency. We give a value to certain metals, and that value fluctuates, but essentially it always becomes down to the idea that there is this medium of exchange that enables us to engage in trade and commerce with other people. And this is why whoever has the control of that money has power. He has the power by which he can manipulate, and he can control everyone. To control the flow and supply of money, regardless of what kind of form it comes in. It may come in the form of paper or metal, or it can come in the form, increasingly, of digits. As Baron Rothschild supposedly once said, let us control the money of a country, and we care not who makes the laws. It's a sad truth, but we know that money does buy power and influence. Not that we see that in our system. The fact is that something as inert and changeable as money could become such a force for both good and evil is why the Bible issues the warnings it does. For example, in 1 Timothy 6:10, it says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It's one of those kind of envy factors that often pushes us. We see someone who has more than us, and we either strive to be them or we despise them because of what they have. Over the last 100 years, the world economy has moved through 4 successive stages. We call them the Industrial Revolution. But each one is divided by, is marked by a very significant change in the development of technology. We have now moved into the last stage, or our most current stage, the Industrial Revolution 4.0, and this came with advanced computerization, the digitizing of everything, and finally AI, where we find that suddenly we have this Internet of everything that will control everything that goes on. But what's notable in regards to this, from a prophetic point of view, is that when John wrote these words over 2,000 years ago, all this was inconceivable. I mean, nobody had even conceived of the possibility to sit there and wonder about what it might be like. That hard currency was the only form, precious metals in particular. In fact, paper currency didn't even come into circulation until the 17th century in Western Europe. Centralized, the idea of a centralized and compulsory control of the monetary system was impossible to the point of being totally unthinkable. And yet we have John here telling us this is what's going to happen. When some people say, well, I don't really think the Bible foretells the future, explain this to me. Explain to me how John can be talking about this centralized, compulsory economic system when he's in a world where people have just stopped banging rocks together. Now, the reason why I want to give you a little bit of a prep before I show you this video is because the video is designed to touch your heartstrings. And as we've watched over and over again, we all come back asking the same question because it features things that really, especially if you're a millennial, really tug on your heart. It talks about poverty, not having clean water, about saving the environment, little tigers not being eaten by big tigers, and all this kind of stuff. They've got pictures of whales, and they've got all this stuff. And yet, if you focus on that, you won't really hear what they're saying. And they talk about the problem, the uber rich and the 1%, but later on they don't refer to them as the rich people. They say basically people who have large net assets, as well as the poorest person on the planet. So with that kind of preparation, I might just say, don't get thrown off by the whales and the tigers. Listen to what they're saying, because in reality, this is not something that's being done for the welfare of mankind as much as it's done for solving one huge problem we have globally and internationally. How do we bring everybody in the world into the next economic system? And even if you're talking about people in the poorest, most remote places on the earth, those people can begin to do business just like you and I would here. But the people on the top of the chain are the ones who are actually making the big bucks. Ultimately, they're driven by a profit motive. So anyway, why don't you roll that flick in, and I'll let you.
At Recovery Centers of America, we will help you or your loved one stop using drugs or alcohol and begin your life of recovery. We provide evidence.
Let you just take it in. It's about 4 minutes long.
The world owns over $275 trillion in assets. 1% of the world's richest own 50% of the world's wealth. Every year, $155 trillion is spent in the developed world, whilst 1.3 billion people live in extreme poverty, starving on less than $1.25 a day. 10% of the world's population relies on untreated surface water. 2.3 billion people still do not have basic sanitation facilities. Globally, 1 billion children experience some type of abuse each year. Endangered whales, tigers, elephants, rhinos and wildlife are poached on a daily basis. The number of critically endangered species has risen to 20 today. More than 29 million people are living in slavery, the greatest number in history. Introducing Sovereign Sky, the planet's first space-based blockchain, powering a new free world currency which will provide and protect our children, save and preserve our wildlife, and aim to eradicate global poverty by 2032. In November 2018, Sovereign Sky will start the launch and deployment of 8 satellites into orbit, covering all of Africa, India, and all countries at the equator, to help its mission to eradicate extreme global poverty. Sovereign Sky will consist of a network of 48 Wi-Fi-enabled satellites, which will cover the entire planet with a private, globally encrypted Wi-Fi network. A global new digital currency built and deployed upon the Sovereign Sky satellite constellation in the jurisdically free arena of space. On the ground, Sovereign Sky will distribute portable modem antennas packaged with blockchain phones, using its own Sovereign Sky and Stealth Grid mesh networking operating system, pre-installed with the Ruon mobile application. Each blockchain phone comes with its own integrated cryptocurrency smart card connected to the phone's digital wallet. Global charities, ultra-high net worth individuals, members of the public, Fortune 500 companies, governments and corporations can bulk buy Sovereign Sky box sets and help distribute them to people in need in the world's poorest and remotest parts. The Sovereign Sky satellite signals are picked up by the modems distributed throughout the world. The modems talk to the phones through their custom-built operating system, and the phone's Instagram-style app and digital wallet connects to each device's cryptocurrency smart card. Sovereign Coin and Sovereign Aid cryptocurrency is then uploaded from Earth to the Sovereign Sky satellite network and can then be beamed to Sovereign Sky modems and phones anywhere in the world. Once the cryptocurrency collects in the phone's digital wallet, the person in need, hospital or village can then buy medicine, clothes, food or water using their smart card, or send the digital money to anyone who has the Ruon app installed to areas. Each phone will be able to feed an entire village for years on end. Each year, $800 billion is donated to charitable organisations with little effect on extreme global poverty. Up to 97% of sovereign aid donations will go straight to the person in need and will be one of the most efficient donation processes to date. For the first time, donors will know exactly who they are donating to. Large corporations and individuals will use Ruon's Instagram-style profile pages to search for villages, hospitals, charities, and where and who they want to donate money to. Donors can now track how their donations are spent through the Ruon blockchain smart card accounting technology. Donors can see the positive impact their donations have made with photos and thank you videos made by the donor recipients. Conservationists and people in need can speak directly to their donors. People in desperate need can also download the app and request sovereign aid in times of emergency and crisis. Sovereign Sky will provide and protect our children, save and preserve our wildlife, and aim to eradicate extreme global poverty by 2032.
I think the Mossad ain't gonna have that one to do that.
Sign me up.
Hell no.
What's brilliant about Sovereign Sky is it isn't competing by being a competitive blockchain or a different kind of cryptocurrency. Rather, it's just simply a platform with all blockchains and all cryptocurrencies can interact with one another globally. But the idea that you can track where your monies go and what they're being used for and direct them where you want. Their mission, as I said, was to create what they called an intra-jurisdictional blockchain that operates outside the jurisdiction of nations and governments through multiple microsatellites. You just realize the amount of investment has been made into this. They have 48 satellites circling the Earth even as we speak. So this is not some pie in the sky. They are actually have huge investments into distributing this worldwide, and it has great attraction to third world countries. Basically, the goal is, they say in their own words, to create a giant free trade zone that eliminates the current nightmare of complying with the rules of over 250 earthbound governments. We need only to look to the sovereign sky. Earthbound governments, we're going to look to the sky. It's kind of an amazing thing to think about. And it's not limited just to the developed nations, they say. It's equally acceptable to the poorest and most remote places and peoples on the earth. It really creates one international global network or marketplace. I'm not saying that this is the end game, because these things have a way of continually changing and growing and becoming even more ominous and more ubiquitous than we even imagined. But whoever controls the system will at that time control the world. Historically, centralization of power has always led to tyranny. I mean, when young people say what's wrong with socialism, the problem with socialism and communism and those kinds of systems is
now you see how they're going to hand over the power to the devil.
Power over everything in the hands of a small cadre of individuals. That it's always the idea of people who are striving to be in control to form the world after their own image. And that, as we talked about self-deification, that's the ultimate act of self-deification, or making myself the object of worship. I want to recreate the world in my own image. I want it to look like me. Revelation is describing a personalized monetary vehicle that links one up with the rest of the world on a global political, economic, and religious system that it said will be controlled by one world leader. What we don't know is what form it will ultimately take, and we're constantly guessing. You know, it's the word that's used here in the Greek for mark literally means a meaningful mark. We don't think a lot about the internet of everything, or the internet of things, because they don't really touch us that much. And yet, as I sat down and began to think about how many ways I'm connected to technology in my day-to-day life, I was really kind of taken back, because it's the frog in the kettle dynamic. It happens a little bit at a time, and you just kind of become enveloped in it, one thing after another, and eventually your whole life is being impacted by this various technology. Excuse me. And that's my whole point as I bring this baby in for a landing. As my AI pilot brings it in for a landing. God foretold us about these things, and he foretold us so that we would believe his word and to do what Jesus said in Matthew 24:33. He says, when you see all of these things, recognize that he is near and right at the door. That's the bottom line to everything I've said today. You know, I said all this stuff.
That was not the prophet's real name, and there was no such thing as no Messiah, so don't try that either. Okay, all the prophets told a lot of people a whole lot of stuff, and they don't need worship. Just like I done told you a lot of stuff. I don't need no worship, because that's called devil worship, and if you worship me, that's just like worshiping the devil. Although I'm not the devil, you make me as an object to be like the devil, because then that would make me, what they call it, it would be pagan for one to do that, and it'd be in vain on top of that. And then it's to set you as an idol, which you wrong, and I don't want that either. So therefore, that whole worshiping some type of sun is wrong.
I gave you all this data because I wanted to convince you that I'm not just making this up, and this isn't far, far away. This is something that's happening even as we speak. And he says, when you see these kind of things happening, you need to stop, look up, and realize that your redemption is drawing near. And you need to live for that redemption, not live simply for the next dividend that you hope to acquire, but live for his redemption and his hope. He says, behold, I stand at the door